It is 5 April today, it's Sunday. I'm Charlie Garrett, and this is the CG Prophecy Report. Getting things backwards. That and a lot of other things to go over on today's report. Okay, first thing is, today is, anybody?
Easter.
It's Resurrection Day. That's right. It is the greatest day in human history. We had the crucifixion of Christ, and Paul speaks about it as one event in Romans where he was crucified and he rose. And so if you don't have the hope of eternal life, I would hope that you would think about what Jesus did, call on Jesus, and be forgiven of your sins, be reconciled to God, and you will have an eternity ahead of you of glory. If not, there is no other path. There is no other path to be reconciled to God. And if you are trusting in your own works, if you're in one of these Hebrew roots movement type of churches or Seventh-day Adventist, they're trying to work their way to heaven. It's not going to work. All you're doing is disgracing the cross of Jesus Christ because he has fulfilled every type and picture that was seen in the Old Testament. The Sabbath, fulfilled. It's Hebrews 4, verse 3. Now we who believe do enter that rest. I haven't taken a day off since 28 September of 2020. I work about 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I don't feel bad about that at all. I'm not trying to earn my salvation. I have it earned for me because of Jesus Christ. If you're trying to earn his favor by not eating pork, you're not going to make it. It's fine if you don't want to eat pork, more bacon for us, but if you're doing it to be pleasing to God, you're doing it for the wrong reason. There is one path to be reconciled to God, and that is just trusting the simple gospel. Christ died for your sins. Christ was interred. He rose again on the third day. That's all you need to believe that premise, and you will be saved. So I would ask that you would do that. I would pray that you would do it. Take yourself out of the equation. If you say I, that's a problem. It's the I problem. Take yourself out and say, I trust Jesus. And that is it. So, got some news from Israel, from Defense News. Volkswagen in talks to make Iron Dome parts at a struggling German auto plant. Somebody was talking about Mercedes-Benz today, and they're not doing so well in Germany with all of their industry, but Volkswagen is in discussions with Israeli defense company Rafael Advanced Defense Systems to convert its factory in Osnabrück, with the little umlaut over the U, Germany, in a production site for components of the Iron Dome defense system, which my friend a week and a half ago told me, well, isn't that ironic? Here they were at war, and now Israel is in Germany having them make defense systems for Israel. The reported talks are one of the most dramatic signs yet of a structural shift underway in Germany's automotive sector, which has struggled to stay competitive in the car industry and has increasingly reoriented itself toward manufacturing military gear. Several automotive manufacturers have begun to retool factories and retrain workers. Among them, Rheinmetall has already moved to convert 2 of its own automotive plants in Berlin and Neuss. And if I'm pronouncing these wrong, we have a German lady here, and I don't want to offend her, but my German is terrible. VW's reported discussions with Rafael would extend that logic to the civilian car maker. The Osnabrück plant employs around 2,300 workers and currently produces the TROC Cabriolet, a model being phased out by mid-2027. Under a prospective deal, the facility would manufacture support components for the Iron Dome, heavy-duty transport trucks, launch units, and power generators rather than the Interceptor missiles, which Rafael plans to produce at a separate German facility. The talks come as Volkswagen contends with its worst financial performance in nearly a decade. The group's operating profit collapsed 53.5% in 2025. When you get rid of the iconic VW Bug, you can expect that you are going to start tanking. That's my opinion. I have owned so many Bugs in my life. The first car I ever owned was a Bug. I had VW buses, the old hippie buses with the split window and Save the Whale sticker on the back of it. And I lived in it for a while. And, these are the things that make life fun. When you got cars like they're making today, that's not fun. That's just, you buy a car, you drive it, and then it goes into the dump. And it's, whereas yesterday I was driving down 41 and there are two restored Volkswagen Bugs from the early 60s right there. And I thought, I'd like to just pull in and go get one of those, but I won't. I've got other priorities, and it's not worrying about a car. The last VW I owned was a VW bus, and I was so tired of working on it because they're always breaking. They're old, and I was under it, laying in the shell driveway at the house, and they're poking me, these shells, and I had the starter, which I was replacing, and the mosquitoes were eating me, and I said to myself, I'm done. And so I got the starter in, I started it up, I drove it downtown, the clutch cable broke at Main Street, and the place is on 12th Street. So they have synchro mesh, which means synchro mesh, which means that if you go at the right speed, you can get it into gear. So I was going at the right speed. It would fall into the next gear. I got to 12th Street. I walked out and I went to Francis, who owns the bug place, and I handed him the keys and I said, this is for you. I said, I need to ride home. That was the end of my bug experience. So anyway, from Art Shiva, old bombs discovered in forgotten bunker, now being used on Iran. Imagine that. They got a bunker in Israel that they forgot about. They got these old non-precision bombs. Well, let's get rid of them somehow. The IDF recently uncovered an old bunker and made a surprising find. Thousands of old bombs. I'd be salivating. This is fun. The bombs that were found in the long-forgotten bunker were over 50 years old and were originally intended to be used against Egyptian military bases before the 1979 peace agreement. The munitions, albeit old and unguided, have not gone to waste. According to the report, they are currently being put to good use in Israel's campaign against Iran by being dropped on regime military bases in areas that are not near population centers. So they just don't care where they land. As long as they land somewhere on the base, let it go. IDF officials explained that the decision to use those old bombs was intended to save money and also to fill the bunker where the bombs were being kept in relatively good condition. The IDF commented on the report. The Air Force operates using a variety of methods and different types of munitions against targets of the Iranian regime. The selection of the type of munitions used is an operational decision dependent on many factors. The Air Force employs munitions only after a regulated process to verify their usability and to ensure the safety and readiness of ground and air crews. Well, how do you check if it's usable? You just go over Iran and drop it and, hey, that one worked. Let's do the rest of them, right? Zero Hedge. IDF Iron Dome operator arrested, charged with spying for Iran. I'm telling you, and I saw a couple more, I think it was this morning. These people that are in Israel, they are Jews, and they're spying for the enemy. These are not smart human beings. An Israeli reservist tied to the country's missile defense network has been charged with serious security offenses after allegedly working with Iranian intelligence. Raz Cohen. The name Cohen means he descends from the high priestly class of Israel. Anytime you see somebody with the name Cohen, that is their genealogy, as they go back to the Kohanim. A 26-year-old from Jerusalem who served in the Iron Dome unit is the alleged culprit. It's been revealed he was arrested March 1st, merely one day after the joint U.S.-Israel war on Iran kicked off. These included passing sensitive security information to the Iranian agent during December 2025, including details about how Iron Dome works, locations of Israeli Air Force bases, and the locations of Iron Dome batteries. Cohen knew exactly who he was communicating with, but he is believed to have merely received $1,000 in cryptocurrency, selling out his nation for $1,000. Israeli law designates that assisting the enemy during wartime carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. That's too bad because they should nix this guy. But in some exceptional cases, the death penalty can be handed down. I would say if he did this, it should not be exceptional. They should just do it. But we'll see. Got some news from Christianity today. from MSN, Supreme Court upholds preacher's First Amendment lawsuit. It's kind of interesting what's going on here. The case, I guess it's Olivier versus the city of Brandon, focused on Gabriel Olivier, a man who regularly preached in public outside an amphitheater in Brandon, Missouri. In 2019, Olivier was restricted from speaking outside the theater and using signs or speakers during live events. In 2021, Olivier was arrested for violating the town's ordinance that placed restrictions on where he could publicly speak. He later sued, claiming the city violated his First Amendment free speech rights. Olivier did not sue over the $350 he was charged. Instead, he sued to ensure the city ordinance would not block him or someone else like him from preaching outside the theater. Assuming a credible threat of prosecution, a plaintiff can bring an action to challenge a local law violating the Constitution and to prevent that law's future enforcement. So this is a future action suit, which I thought was kind of interesting. Justice Elena Kagan wrote in the court's majority opinion, believe it or not, the case challenged precedent set by Heck versus Humphrey, where SCOTUS determined an individual cannot proceed with a lawsuit to challenge a previous conviction. Kagan said a lawsuit seeking future relief from an activity, like Olivier exercising his First Amendment rights, was valid under the court's precedent. She compared it to a prisoner seeking a more fair trial in the future. There's no looking back in Olivier's suit, both in the allegations made and in the relief sought. The suit is entirely future-oriented, even if success in it shows that something past should not have occurred. His suit to enjoin the ordinance so he can return to the amphitheater may proceed. So there you go. They have sided with this guy, and now he can go ahead and proceed with the suit, and then he can ensure that never again will they interfere with his First Amendment rights. You know, it's not fair if you allow somebody over here. Most places, and it's perfectly fine, they say you cannot go out in public with like a megaphone and start broadcasting. You can't do that unless you get a permit. Thank you. That's annoying, and it should not be allowed. But if somebody can get a permit and they deny it to him because he is an annoying guy and they don't like Christianity or for any other reason, that is not an excuse to take away his First Amendment rights. That's the point of all this going on. No more, they're going to allow him to continue. MSN. Pope calls for ban on airstrikes. Says no one should fear death and destruction from above. Now imagine this. Imagine the thinking of this guy. War is war. If you don't have airstrikes, you don't have war. I mean, drones are from the air. Bullets actually fly in the air. Everything. All right, what are you going to do? Tunnel under somebody and grab them? And, you know, the guy is totally unrealistic in his thinking. I guarantee you, based on what I read, and I'll probably include in next week's report, he's never read his Bible. I guarantee you this guy does not know what the Bible says about anything. Anyway, airplanes should always be carriers of peace, never of war, the Pope said. No one should be afraid that threats of death and destruction might come from the sky. Okay, so if a jet loses its engine and it crashes into a house, isn't that the same thing? Right? I mean, it's a threat from the sky, so we need to get rid of all jet airplanes now. I mean, the thinking is just not normal.
Air war also significantly less destructive than a ground.
Absolutely. Exactly. And you know, how many people have not died in this Iranian conflict because they have targeted strikes instead of just going through and killing everybody in a ground war? So, good point. After the tragic experiences of the 20th century, aerial bombers should have been banned forever, he said. Instead, they still exist, and technological development, positive in itself, is being placed at the service of war. This is not progress, it is regression. Well, it is progress because, as he just pointed out, if you have a ground war, you're going to have a lot of maimed and harmed people that may not otherwise have been maimed or harmed. While he did not explicitly reference the war in Iran, the Pope has repeatedly called for peace in recent days. He decried the violence in Iran as a scandal to the whole human family. So it's okay for them to threaten other countries for 40 years, actively arm insurgents and kill people all around the globe That's fine, but it's not okay to stop them from doing it because somehow they have to be stopped. And they have not been stopped for 40 years, so the thinking is erratic. Last week, the Pope urged a ceasefire. Violence can never lead to the justice, stability, and peace that the people are waiting for. It's not going to happen. As I said, the book is written, and the final book of the Bible shows complete death and destruction. Jesus said, if the Son of Man didn't return soon enough, there'd be nobody left. If the Father did not shorten those days, there would be no people left. The book is written. We can't go and say we're going to usher in peace. That's not something that will ever happen. God has a plan, and it includes, here's what happened. The Noah flood happened because there was wickedness on the earth, and it was the inevitable result of wickedness of man. God said he will never flood the world again, okay? So what is he going to do when the wickedness rises above the level of what the earth can bear under? He's going to let man destroy himself. I've given you this, I've given you this, I've given you all these different dispensations. I finally sent my son to die for your sins. You have rejected that. You are the ones that will end up destroying yourself. Isaiah says man is going to be scarcer than fine gold. The book is written. This guy needs to understand that this is a fallen world, and he's not willing to do so. As much as I hate the thought of war, hate the thought of people stealing from each other, these things are going to continue to happen, and they're only going to get worse. Gateway Pundit, spiritual war. Once again, top exorcists asked Pope Leo to increase number and training of specialized priests to combat surge in occultism and satanic practices. So they want to have these people that, drive out demons and all that. What people need is not that. What people need is the gospel. The gospel is what changes lives, not that kind of nonsense. If people don't hear the gospel, they will never come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, and they will continue to be property of the devil. John 3:18. Got some news from the Mideast and Africa today. From the post-millennial, U.S. service member in hijab indicates she would refuse commands targeting Muslims. Right in the U.S. military. A video shows a female Muslim U.S. military service member appearing to indicate that she would refuse a command if it was directed towards Muslims. In the clip, the uniformed service member is seen answering questions during a live stream while other personnel walk behind her. Reading a viewer's question aloud, she said, "Would you refuse a command if it's headed towards Muslims?" After a brief pause, she smirks, glances to her left, and then looks back at the camera before giving a thumbs up, appearing to signal yes. So what should happen is she should be removed from the U.S. military. We have people in the Civil War that were Christians, and they were Christians on both sides. And what would they do at night? They'd sing songs to each other over the river. And the next day, they would get back up and they would engage in battle. It's the world we live in. Jerusalem Post. Uganda. I don't know if you saw this, but what a stand. It's a little country and they couldn't help much, but just to come out and publicly do this is so wonderful. Uganda will join Iran war on the side of Israel, military chief warns. Uganda's Chief of Defense Forces, General Kayin Urugaba, expressed his support for Israel amid the ongoing war with Iran in a series of posts. "We want the war in the Middle East to end now. The world is tired of it," he wrote, adding that any talk of destroying or defeating Israel will bring Uganda into the war on the side of Israel. In another deleted post, he claimed the UPDF will begin participating in the war. I could see him deleting that because you don't want to give away your attack maneuvers and what your plans are, but he again said, on the side of Israel. If it doesn't end soon, Israel has a right to exist and attacks against her must stop. Later on Thursday, I can't pronounce the guy's name, we'll just call him General K, said in another post that he offered the help of Ugandan defense forces to both the U.S. and Israel. Last month, General K announced in a post that Uganda will soon build a statue honoring Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Yoni Netanyahu. This is the brother of the Prime Minister at Entebbe International Airport. He said the statue would be placed in the exact spot where Netanyahu was killed following the 1976 hijacking of an Air France flight that led to the abduction of about 100 Jews and Israelis. General Kay said the monument is a symbol of the ties between the two countries, although no formal government announcement was made concerning the creation of the statue. But they have very strong relationships, and I'm glad to see that. From the Washington Free Beacon, Zohran Mamdani's wife celebrated Palestinian terrorists, including the plane hijacker, in social media posts from early adulthood. Well, if they do to her what they just did to the two people in California who had their citizenship revoked, and they are now being deported because of that kind of thing, the mayor of New York City may be without a wife living with her pretty soon. I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but they're not taking this anymore. If you are in this country, and I don't know if she is a citizen or if she's on a green card, and even if she's a citizen, they can go back and say you applied for your citizenship illegally by denying these things. And if that happens, because they just did it to a Chinese couple, citizens, they went back and took away their citizenship and they're going. So that is a possibility, but it's inappropriate to exist in a country that has offered you grace to come and malign that country. You try that in any other country, and they're not going to deport you. They're going to execute you. So, Mongolia. From Japan Wire, South Korea, Mongolia discuss accelerating economic partnership negotiations. Good deal. Mongolia holds abundant deposits of critical minerals such as copper, molybdenum, and rare earths, making the country a promising partner for Seoul's supply chain cooperation. Mongolia is an emerging market where Korean companies are actively expanding their business and also an important partner for resource cooperation, taking over the world. Daniel 12 Technology. From the Star. Billionaire-backed scientists aim to grow headless humans and farm their organs. This sounds like something out of some bizarre Hollywood movie, and this has been going on for a while, but they're at another step of this. Billionaires are pumping cash into a cutting-edge tech company that works in the production of genetically engineered monkey organs, with the hope that lab-grown human parts could not be far behind. Boston-based biotechnology firm R3BIO works in the production of living organ systems that are grown artificially and not supported by any sort of brain, developing these bodyoids as an alternative for animal testing. So they're more worried about animal testing than creating bodyoids. I don't know. Their work involves trying to produce things like lungs, kidneys, and hearts from a few cells in the lab and keeping them alive in order to perform experiments on them. R3Bio have received backing from several powerful investors in the sector of biotechnology. We think replacement is probably better than repair when it comes to treating diseases or regulating the aging process in the human body. If we can create a non-sentient headless bodyoid for a human being, that will be a great source of organs. Despite the bullishness of investors, R3Bio have been cautious to plant their flag too firmly in the world of headless humans grown in labs, although their CEO did declare that this bodyoid technology could prove to be a useful alternative for animal testing. We need integrated, full system human biology platforms. That means human cells-based models that incorporate vasculature, immune components, and endocrine signaling. They're trying to make a whole body together so that everything functions and keeps the other organs alive. Models that can metabolize drugs, develop inflammation, and respond systematically, not just in one tissue, but across many. If we want to move beyond animal testing, we need to treat system-level modeling as a national infrastructure. It just doesn't sound right to me. I don't know about any of you, but that does not sound like something that we should be getting into. But, okay, it's a dangerous world, including the Revelation plagues, Mail Online. Deadly bird flu detected in California after jumping to 2 new species for the first time ever. That's a problem. When it mutates between species, then there is a greater chance that it could mutate into the human species. So it hasn't happened, but this is the problem. The more they mutate, the more possible it becomes. It ignites fears that the virus is mutating and could spread among humans. Officials in San Mateo County near San Francisco have confirmed infections in a California sea lion and a southern sea otter, marking the first time ever that virus has been detected in these species in the state. Experts are alarmed every time the virus spreads to new species, as I said, because it raises the risk that it could mutate and become able to easily infect and spread from person to person. Although concerning the two new species infected, they are not thought to be intermediate hosts or animals from which the virus could easily jump to humans. We don't have any, common bond with them other than just, they're created by God. And so it's not something that can easily jump to us is the point. MSN. CDC issues global travel notice over mosquito-borne brain bleeding virus. Okay, so don't get that. News Nation now. Two Chinese companies, 6 nationals indicted in fentanyl conspiracy. They're here in the country, they're taking this stuff, they're making it here, and they are trying to destroy human lives. And so they've indicted these companies for doing these things. Morality. The Post-Millennial. Judge releases Miami boy charged in a violent gang rape of a 12-year-old girl. Let him back out on the street. I mean, the fact that is, I won't say it, but, when I was 14, I didn't know very much, if that tells you anything, right? They're out there actively doing things. And they're letting him back out on the streets. Oh, he's only 14. He didn't mean it. What about the poor girl that had to endure that? From Fox, EU blocks U.S. vote to define gender as biological men and women at UN Women's Forum. Newsmax, Newsom's wife? You think? Christians hold back the abortion agenda. No kidding. Yes, we take that seriously. From the Post-Millennial, trans Nova Scotia teen charged with plotting violent attack against a high school. Nobody reported on that except for people like the Post-Millennial. You didn't see that in regular news. Breitbart, outrage after transgender migrant gets just 6 months in New York jail for raping a teen. All these sanctuary cities, it's like they want these things to happen. They want brutality. They want people harmed. And I don't understand that thinking. I have no ability to empathize with their side of the argument. None. Just the news. California school district spends over $900,000 on a DEI program. Mail Online, woke University of Southern California cancels prospective governor's debate at the 11th hour because all the candidates were white. Yeah, canceled. Epic Times, IOC bars transgender athletes from women's events for Olympic Games. Zero Hedge, woke Star Trek series canceled after embarrassing critical failure. Woke Star Trek series canceled. That used to be the most popular thing in the world. Put out a new Star Trek series, and everybody went to the TV and they watched every series, and then they wanted a new one to come out as soon as that one ended. Now it's canceled. Deep news. Iceland man faces 2-year prison sentence for claiming men can't breastfeed. Activist and politician under investigation. Saying the truth, and you can face 2 years in prison for it. Fox. Louisville to pay $800,000 after Christian photographer beats law, forcing her to shoot same-sex weddings. They can call any photographer on the planet and say, would you shoot my wedding? But they don't. They target Christians, and Christians have been tired of this, and they've been suing, and they've been winning every single time. I will not take photos of that wedding. Call somebody else, and instead they sue. Zero Hedge. Iceland strips father of custody after questioning gender transitioning of his autistic minor child. They're taking away the custody of the father because he says what is being indoctrinated into my child is wrong. And so they just say, okay, well, we're going to take it away, boy, girl, whatever. They're just going to do it themselves. Ruining human life. Got some other news. This is entitled Getting Things Backward. Zero Hedge. UN adopts slavery resolution calling for reparations despite U.S. and European objections. UN General Assembly adopted a resolution declaring the trafficking of enslaved Africans the gravest crime against humanity and calling for reparations. The vote saw 123 countries voting in favor of the resolution, with only the U.S., Israel, and Argentina voting against it. The UK, France, Spain, Portugal, and the Netherlands, who are all heavily involved in the slave trade during the 17th and 18th and part of the 19th centuries, were among the 52 countries that abstained. The resolution put forward by Ghana declares the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. That is the gravest crime of all in all of human history, adding that the claims for reparations represent a concrete step towards remedying historical wrongs against Africans and people of African descent. You're remedying something that happened 100, 200 years ago. They're all dead. They've all been assimilated into these countries. None of them want to go back to Africa because they've got it better off where they are, and this is going to remedy it. Ghanaian President Mahama, who helped draw up the resolution, said an estimated 13 million African men, women, children were enslaved over several centuries. The document says that under international law, states bear responsibility for intentionally wrongful acts and have an obligation to cease the act if it is continuing and to offer appropriate assurances and guarantees of non-repetition if the circumstances so require, and to make full reparation for the injury caused, which may take the form of restitution, compensation, and satisfaction, either singly or in combination. But the U.S. dissented, and here's why. Deputy U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Dan Negrea, said before the vote that the resolution's text was highly problematic in countless respects. He said the U.S. does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical wrongs that were not illegal under international law at the time that they occurred. The U.S. also strongly objects to the resolution's attempt to rank crimes against humanity in any type of hierarchy. The assertion that some crimes against humanity are less severe than others objectively diminishes the suffering of countless victims and survivors of other atrocities throughout history, like 62 million being killed by the Chinese, okay? Negrea said, the U.S. must once again remind this body that the UN exists to maintain international peace and security and not to advance narrow specific interests and agendas, to establish niche international days, or to create new costly meeting and reporting mandates. James Kariuki, charge d'affaires to the United Nations, said that the UK disagreed with the fundamental propositions of the text and therefore could not vote in favor of it. The UK is firmly of the view that we must not create a hierarchy of historical atrocities. None of the recognized sources of international law, as set out in Article 38 of the Statute of the International Court of Justice, identify a prohibition on slavery and the slave trade until the 20th century. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who will be stepping down, thankfully, later this year, said he welcomed the steps some countries are taking to apologize for their role in the evil of slavery. Why are they getting this wrong? I said this is getting things backwards. It's because somebody had to sell those slaves into slavery before they were taken to slave nations. And that was the African nations that grabbed their own people and people from other communities that they had wars with. They got those people and they sold them. Therefore, it is my proposal to the United Nations that all African nations that were participating in the sale of Africans need to pay all of the reparations to all of the black people that are not in Africa today. And I think that would take care of this problem. Whitehouse.gov, ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. This is EO by the president, by the authority vested me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. It is hereby ordered, Section 1, Purpose and Policy. The Biden administration forced illegal and immoral discrimination programs going by the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion into virtually all aspects of the federal government, in areas ranging from airline safety to the military. This was a concerted effort stemming from Biden's first day in office when he issued EO 13985, advancing racial equality and support for undeserved communities through the federal government. Pursuant to EO 13985 and follow-on orders, nearly every federal agency and entity submitted equity action plans to detail the ways that they have furthered DEI's infiltration of the federal government. The public release of these plans demonstrated immense public waste and shameful discrimination. That ends today. Americans deserve a government committed to serving every person with equal dignity, and respect, and to expending precious taxpayer resources on making America great. Every person. If you have tribalism in a country, that country will not stand. America is a melting pot. It is a country where every person comes in and they are considered the same as everybody else without identity as far as culture or color. And once you take that away, that country will no longer be a country. It will be a series of tribal units that are at enmity with each other. Zero hedge. Biden-era intelligence assessment targeted white moms and homemakers as potential domestic terrorists. Yes, the Trump admin recently extracted an October 2021 intelligence assessment titled Women Advancing White, Racially and Ethnically Motivated Violent Extremist Radicalization and Recruitment. That branded average women as domestic terrorists. America First Legal, a conservative nonprofit law firm, shared the now retracted assessment on X, saying it reveals top to bottom bias at Biden's CIA. The Biden CIA invented the term white REMVEs to describe people they claim incite, facilitate, or conduct violence because they believe their perception of an idealized white European ethnic identity is under attack from people who embody and support multiculturalism and globalism. White REMVE sympathetic actors are defined in the documents as those who may not openly advocate violence, but instead amplify narratives about perceived threats. This is a CIA being targeted against people of a certain color because they think a certain way and they can't even define it. They're perceived threats. From multiculturalism and globalization, narratives deemed by the Biden regime as threats included pro-life activism. If you're pro-life, you are a threat to the United States government, and promoting traditional motherhood and homemaking as women's most important responsibility. If you believe in the nuclear family and that you should be a mother, you are a terrorist, according to the Biden administration. And
It's illegal because the CIA is supposed to
absolutely overseas only, and they're targeting American citizens. That's against the law. An agency with critical intelligence responsibility was spending its resources targeting women promoting motherhood. MSN. Education Department vacates headquarters in major shakeup. Getting smaller. It's going to go away soon. The Department of Education will leave its Lyndon B. Johnson headquarters in D.C. by August 2026, relocating to a smaller office nearby. The move, part of the Trump admin's effort to dismantle the agency, follows a nearly 50% workforce reduction and will save estimated $4.8 million annually. That's a pittance. It's not the saving of the money. It's the saving of America's children. Since the Department of Education became a organization, our grades have every single year tanked to the point where we are way behind all nations. We are way behind the nations of the world. The Department of Energy, another DOE, will take over the LBJ building, avoiding $350 million in maintenance costs at its current facility. So now we're up to $355 million, which that's a bit of money. The relocation is part of a broader Trump admin strategy to dismantle the Department of Education and return control to the states. I guarantee you that the states like Florida that start promoting proper education when they get these government funds and there's no longer a Department of Education will be up here in a couple of years, and all of the Democrat-led states that continue this DEI stuff will never advance and they will continue to sink down, putting out dolts instead of brilliant children. That's what's going to happen. Mark my words. Over the past year, many of the department's programs and responsibilities have been transferred to other agencies, including the recent shift of defaulted student loan management to the Treasury. Critics, including evil is my word, Democrat lawmakers and unions, argue the move signals a diminished federal role in ensuring equal access to quality education. How can that be? Zero hedge. I'll just read the article. A convicted pedophile migrant who failed to disclose his child sex offense when applying to stay in Britain has won an appeal against deportation because a judge ruled the omission was simply an honest mistake. Now listen to this. Eddie Cardoso Ramos, who was convicted in Portugal of molesting a 5-year-old child, can now fight to remain in the UK after the upper tribunal accepted his explanation that he thought the immigration form only asked about UK convictions. So he lied and he said, no, I've never been convicted of this. He had been, but it was in another country. And so I thought you only meant here, and they're going to let him stay. That's the UK. That's where we were heading over the past 4 years. U.S. News. Iran war should trigger faster exit from fossil fuel dependence, UN climate chief says. That's getting things exactly backwards. They are catering to the terrorists instead of taking care of the problem. They're saying we need to get rid of fossil fuel instead of saying we have a problem with the delivery of fossil fuel because of a terrorist nation. Everything is backwards. Kiev independent, Ukrainian drones killing Russian troops faster than Moscow can replace them, drone commander says. So last week we had a lot of death. Well, now they're saying that they can no longer sustain the number of people that are being killed in Russia by the Ukrainians because they are killing them faster than they can produce new recruits. They cannot win a war of attrition like that. They will have to stop at some point. Zero Hedge. 2 years later, no Key Bridge. Remember the Key Bridge that got hit by the big boat and fell down? Okay, yeah. No Key Bridge as Maryland Democrats focus on tampons in men's bathroom. Yeah, the Republicans call it tampons for Timmy. They do. It's crazy. That's what they're debating. They haven't got the Key Bridge fixed, but that. Zero Hedge. Chicago approves a... Okay, we want tourists to come to Chicago. Listen to this. Chicago approves a 19% hotel tax to fund tourism push.
Sign me up.
We're dealing with Democrats here. Mail Online. Seattle's ultra-woke mayor halts installing new CCTV police cameras in case they're used to target illegal immigrants. So she's not going to install these to keep the crime down because they want to protect criminals. Everything is backwards. Everything is backwards with the Democrat Party of the United States. Everything. There's not one thing I can think of that they have done in the past 10 years, or maybe longer, that has been reasonable. I'm talking about morally reasonable. Nothing. Okay, who said it? If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. I can tell you that Bill Clinton should have taken that advice. He did. Mark Twain. Okay, irony. I got 3 of them for you today. The first one, Gateway Pundit, Connecticut Democrats pass bill requiring photo ID to recycle cans, but they won't support the Save America Act. Zero Hedge, quad amputee, cornhole pro. He's got all of his arms and legs were amputated, but he's got these little nubs, and he's a cornhole pro. He can throw this thing with his nubs, and he's a pro at it. Quad amputee cornhole pro accused of murder and Tesla getaway. Yes, no fingerprints could be found at the scene of the crime. Yeah. Third irony, the irony of ironies. A baby was born in a feeding stall. A feeding stall. A little baby. He lived under the law of Moses. He perfectly fulfilled the law of Moses. And he gave up his life for the sins of the people of the world. Death had its victory, didn't it? No, the irony is that 3 days later, that man came out of the tomb, defeating death for you and for me. That is the greatest irony of all. Thanking God for Jesus Christ our Lord. Such is the world in which we live. So from Sarasota, Florida to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, I'm Charlie Garrett, and that is your CG Prophecy Report for the week.